Speaker, when we are evaluating tiger parenting, we need to evaluate the further, and the extreme impact that this has on society and the way that it defines what success means for society. Firstly, a few pieces of setup. Firstly, in terms of what do we think tiger parenting looks like? We think that tiger parenting is the idea that academic excellence and the excellence in things like music and sports is the biggest priority for children, right? This isn't just like what this means is that this is not normal parenting where you just want your child to do the best. This is parenting where you believe that the child's happiness does not matter, where the most important thing is like putting a lot of pressure on this child being rank one, this child being first place, and this child reaching full academic excellence above everything else. We think tiger parenting is an extreme method of believing that academic results and excellence are the best things for your children, right? We think on our side, we have to oppose the idea of tiger parenting. We do not have to oppose the idea that parents are allowed to push their kids or that parents are allowed to want the best for their kids. However, we just oppose this idea of tiger parenting as it exists under the status quo, where these kids are extremely pressured and have an extreme amount of pressure and for academic excellence put on them. So again, we think the alternative is that parents just want the best for their kids. However, they do not push them to the current extent, and when they believe that their happiness and the way that they are progressing in general as a human being is also important, not just these tangible results which they have. Firstly, in terms of the impact on kids, two impacts. Firstly, in terms of why is there a lot of academic pressure and why is tiger parenting not effective? We think the main reason that tiger parenting exists, the main objective of tiger parents in general, is to basically have the best results for their child. They have the best sense of academic excellence. Why is tiger parenting not good for this? Sure, tiger parenting will result in the occasional child genius who's pushed really hard by their parents. But we think in the vast majority of cases, what this means is that due to the extreme amount of pressure placed on children, that these children effectively start to break down, right? Like children can be 10 or 12 years old and have excessive amounts of tutoring, excessive amount of pressure put on them. And we think that naturally this just does not result in good results in the long term. Even if opposition can say in the short term we get way better academic results, there's a high chance of burning out while they're children. And if it's not while they're children, we see a high chance of them burning out once they become adults. On the individual level, when we talk about academic results and things like this, we think that the pressure that is placed by parents on these children is extremely negative, and this is things which drastically affected the way they're able to perform, right? We do not have to say outside the house, we don't have to say that tiger parenting never results in good outcomes. What we have to say is that in general, tiger parenting is a bad ideology because tiger parenting pressures the idea that you should be the best. You should be in the top 10%, the top 1%. However, due to it by definition, not everybody can be in this highest group of the society. And so as a result, what this means is that it places a severe amount of pressure for people to get into this top 10% to achieve really highly. And so when kids don't achieve really highly, what we think happens is that these kids are essentially crushed. And I'll talk further when I talk about how society then is affected by this idea of tiger parenting. We think that these kids get crushed. These kids and these parents are basically written off. Their value that they can still contribute to society is not sufficiently acknowledged as it would be in a world in which we do not have this idea, in which we do not have tiger parenting. Secondly, even for the kids who achieve really well, we think that this is still bad for them because even if they may be achieving really well, we think what this means is that again they are less likely to have this sustainability over time. They're not achieving well because of intrinsic motivation, they're achieving well because of extrinsic motivation. We think that this extrinsic motivation will naturally go away. Eventually they'll move out of their house. Eventually this extrinsic motivation won't be enough when everything inside of them is telling them that they are not enjoying what they're doing under the status quo. And therefore, we think when you're talking about what happens to these kids, at the end of the day, all kids who have tiger parenting put on them, whether or not they're successful, at the end of the day, this is always has a negative impact on them, even if they achieve well. Secondly, in terms of relationship with parents and what this does for this, we think this is highly likely to create a negative relationship with their parents. Why is this the case? Firstly, we think when these tiger parents are tiger parenting their children, they are pushing them further. They're pushing them against their children's happiness in many circumstances. And this will create an association in the children's mind that their parents are bad for them, that their parents do not want what is best for them, that their parents do not really care about them at the end of the day. We think this is extremely detrimental because what this means is that these children just have way worse relationships with their family and things like this. And eventually this builds up over time. Tiger parenting is not an effective method. And the reason that and because of the reason the relationship with parents gets worse, this is a key reason why tiger parenting does not work out in the long run. This is a key reason why tiger parenting is bad for these children at the end of the day. And we think that children were just a really important stakeholder in this debate, right? They were only a child for 18 years of their life. They ought to enjoy their childhood. Even while they were succeeding, we think it was okay to push them to succeed, but there should not be the idea that excellence has to come before everything. It is just not sustainable, does not result in good practical outcomes. And secondly, we think it just results in bad mental health for their children. There is a reason when you look at the most academically competitive societies, particularly like those in East Asia and like certain communities in the United States. These are societies which have extreme like some of the highest youth suicides rate, right? These are places where kids would literally rather kill themselves than continue their existence as a child. We think this is extremely symptomatic of the fact that this effectively ruins the childhood of these kids, and therefore we think this was just something that was morally wrong to force onto kids. These kids should not have this ideology forced onto them. Therefore, we oppose tiger parenting. Secondly, in terms of what's the impact on broader society, we think when you have tiger parenting and this idea that success and excellence is the only thing that matters, we think that this is bad for the society in general. Because we think this creates the idea in society that if you do not go, if you're not successful, if you do not go to the best university, the best college, then effectively a lot of your value has been removed. And why do we think this is detrimental? First, we think that this like writes off a large portion of the population, right? Not everybody can get into the top university in their country, whether that be like Ivies in the US or like the Tsinghua and like Beijing University in China and different universities in East Asia. So what we think it does to this society group of population is it disenfranchises them to an extreme amount. And we think this means is that these societies are fundamentally unstable because you have a large proportion of the population who are not accounted for properly in society, whose society does not believe that they are successful because this idea of tiger parenting. We think the idea of tiger parenting extends beyond just parenting your children and extends into like broader society as a whole, right? Because like we think this creates a norm that like you have to follow this standard of tiger parenting, especially when it permeates culture to the extent we see under the status quo. And so again, this results in less economic activity and efficiency for these societies as a whole, because it means that they're not able to utilize people. These people may be perfectly able to do professional jobs. However, due to the pressure that is given on them, that you have to go to a good university, these people are basically seen as worthless by society, and therefore they are not able to achieve their full potential when it comes to generating economic value. And in general, we think this creates a society in which there's a large amount of pressure and where a large proportion of the population are disenfranchised, which is extremely bad for like social cohesion and harmony in general. At the end of my speech, you see a few things. Firstly, target parenting never works for kids, even when it seemingly does. And secondly, it's bad for broader society as a whole. So proud to propose.
As the option, we want to emphasize that tiger parenting are still parenting. Parenting who wants to be a severe parenting. We all want to be loving parenting because we are parents. We hope our kids can be fun, can be happiness, can have happiness, can be healthy forever. But however, parenting is not looking for the right now. It's not looking for the short term. Maybe the short term can make him happy. But however, what about the long term? Long term, they are still facing some severe problems like the houses, like the housing, the cars, like their KPI and their grades. There's so many things to worry about. As a parents, we have the obligation to help them. And parenting doesn't just like the open government has talked about that only wants the grades. No, we're parents. We want to give love to we want to give love to our kids, give a great, bright future to our kids, and not just taking their happiness away. We're looking for their bright future. So as the open opposition, we believe that we shouldn't take away tiger parenting, shouldn't take away the bright future of the kids. So I will review the open government. Secondly, we'll give our two arguments. Firstly, it's talking about the principle that is that parents have the obligation to give the kids a bright future and a great environment to grow up. Secondly, we want to talk about that the future planning, weighing the long-term and short-term benefits. And let's go. Firstly, we're going to review that the OG's point. The OG's their first point is talking about that give too much pressure to the kids. But however, we've got a response to it. Pressure is a way to push the kids to have a bright future. If no pressure, that no one wants to work. No one, if there's no KPI, that the people like the workers want to work. If there's no grades, no tests, the student will study fast, will study have a high quality. If so, but well, so while being said that pressure makes we grow up, pressure makes we having process. Just like when it's the stone age that we have to live. So that's the reason why that we invented fire. That's the reason why that we have society right now. So we believe that pressure is a way to grow. So we believe that pressure maybe is not just a way to taking away the happiness of the kids. We want your kids to grow because our love. But also we want to talk about that pressure by by solving pressure that we can have more communication, talk about our expectation, talk about that how severe the society is, to let the kids know that the reality is really, really messed up. So we're going to have a great preparation for it. So that's the reason why we have pressure. Second, they talk about that sustainability. They talk about that only the tiger parents pushing that the kids will grow. But however, we believe that this thing is kind of habit. Habit grows up when the kids are still grow, when kids are still young. When the kids are still young, you can ask them to go to bed earlier, to go to have a greater sleep. So that's the reason why that the kids will have a better sleep, having better quality, have a better physical health before the peers. So that's the reason why that habitat is going to have. So their second point is to just talk about that sustainability is not so stand and realistic. Now moving on to our 3 points. Moving on to our 2 points. Firstly, the principle that the parents have the obligation to give a kid a great environment, to provide the best environment. The best environment doesn't mean that we have to give kids always being some positive effects, so giving positive comments, even though the kids are not doing well. The best environment means that the parents is the one who knows the kids the most. So parenting means that we have to give the most to the kids for the bright future, not just for the now happiness. We're looking for the future happiness. The obligation means that because we're parents, so we should think more about the kids, think in their shoes. What if we grow them happily, we give them a really, really, really happiness, and even spoil the kids, so the kids won't be so successful in the future, and they can only rely themselves for the whole life on ourselves. So how to face it? So when it's really came to that case that we can't help it anymore because we're old now. We cannot give the kids anything support. So what we can do is to support them right now, to provide them best environment, to provide the best schools, to provide the best academics, to give them more pressure because we want to provide the best environment. And if we don't tell them, if we don't give them that, so just being spoiled is just fine. No sex. Spoiled is just fine. It doesn't require so many salaries. But however, we have to do this because for the future plan. Second, to talk about the consequences is about future planning. We have already mentioned some of this in our first point, but we want to mention it furtherly. So we're talking about the short term is meaning that spoil kids that being, oh mom, I don't want to do any housework. Okay, fine. Mom, I don't want to go to school. I want to have school works. Oh, fine, fine, fine. Just because of fine, it ruins kids that do not want to do anything, do not have the motivation to, and do not have any ability. So how could this kid live without the parents? No sex. So that's totally harmful to the kids. And the kid was thinking that, oh, everyone should treat me like this. This society is so great. It's so nice. It's the church. It's so great. But however, the society is not. Everyone is competing with ourselves. This world is just a competition. So if you want to live, you have to grow up. You have to feel the pressure. Now, parents giving the pressure is the least pressure, and so the kids can have the steps to go into the further plan, go into the society. So that's the reason why that the spoiled kid in short term is not so great. And we're looking forward is the long term effects. When these kids are growing up, they'll understand the reality. They will understand the reality, and they will understand that not everyone is going to help me, not everyone is going to love me. So the kid will know that how to treat others in a positive way that do not harm kids himself and not harm others. So that's the reason why the long term is so effective and so important in our life. Now our goals of being parenting is for the love for the kids' future. But however, giving kids support, giving tiger parenting is not just taking away kids' happiness. It's talking about that giving kids support, giving kids a better environment, giving giving kids the mind of the world. And if you support us, if you support the kids' future, please vote for opening opposition. That's all. Thank you.
The problem with most of opposition bench's case in this debate is that they just don't consider what the real counterfactual is. Because no, we are not defending spoiling kids. We are simply defending that we aren't going to be like tiger parenting, tiger parents, and just like hammering out like away at academics 24/7 every day. That was the world that we opposed. We didn't oppose a world where like parents were reasonable and sensible. They were the side of the house that opposed that world. Okay, now I'm just going to just like delete their case and just like do some substantive. I don't know. First thing I want to rebut is they claim that this is required to make people work harder, and that just sort of has like a bunch of benefits. The responses. Firstly, there are already plenty of incentives for people to work hard. For example, when you lived in like a like really competitive society, you probably from a young age already knew what it felt like to be poor. You already knew like how important like it was for you to be able to get into a good job, get into good uni to make the money in the first place. But secondly, there's probably already a lot of social norms surrounding this in the first place. For example, through schools, through the education system of everyone trying to compete against you. So what this all meant was that there was already plenty of incentives existing under status quo. I thought that this extra push from target parents probably pushed kids over the edge. As we told you at PM, this often leads to for example, kids committing suicide, literally because they think that their life is not valuable anymore, simply because they were completely determined by their academic results. Second response is to say that this is not needed if the target parents were the only incentives that kids have to work hard. That is to say, if target parents were the only incentive for kids to work hard, it is unclear why you needed that incentive in the first place for these kids to survive in this society. If clearly this society was able to function perfectly fine without any other norm for these kids to work hard. The third response here is to say this just often led to just like too much pressure. I just thought that this was pretty harmful for kids who weren't able to enjoy their childhood anymore. I would know. You should pretty much weigh enjoying a kid's childhood so much more than, for example, their future. Simply because the future is like really uncertain. It is very uncertain whether or not like this extra education would actually be able to help them, especially in 21st century society. But we also know here that it is guaranteed that the moment you give kids more freedom, they probably enjoy their childhood more. This was the time of their life that they should be enjoying. That's the first thing out of this debate. Second thing they tell you here was like parents know no kids' future is better, so therefore like they should be able to force themselves onto these kids. First response here is like, well, we support that to some degree. Like, of course, yes, parents, like most of the times will know their kids' future better, but we just don't support this when this was target parenting, i.e. when this was only about co-curriculars, when this was only about like the academic performance, right? Second response, children just trust parents more under our side of the house. That meant they were more likely to listen to their parents. Not here. This was an incredibly important, like substantive contribution we gave you at first, for the reason that if they listened to their parents more, they were probably better off, simply because they'll put more effort into the activities, because they genuinely believe that they needed to work hard in order to exist in this society. But also secondly note here that this was likely going to be a long-term habit they form into the future, because now they know the reasoning and stuff like that behind why their parents wanted them to work so hard. So we get more trust when it comes to parents. That probably just meant that children will still listen to their parents in the first place. Third response here is to say that we're just more balanced. Like we just don't have to say like, I don't know, we have to push kids to like the absolute limits, which is what target parenting literally supports, right? So I think that parents still, yes, they do know like kids' future better. They can still to some degree influence them. Fourthly is to say that target parenting is just wrong in the way that it only focuses on academic. So I tell you here that this wasn't like the kid's future. Like the kid's future isn't determined by only like how smart you are. It was also about things like, for example, like emotional intelligence and that kind of stuff, right? The fifth response here is to say that parents just don't always have perfect knowledge. Like I just thought that there were always going to be cases where kids might know the future better, simply because they were in a more active when it comes to like the AI world, when they were more active when it comes to technology, which was just like the future anyways, right? Now onto the claim that target parenting is the best way because it provides them for the reality of society. First thing I'm going to do is just flip this argument, because part of this argument for them was to say that for example, this will include things like showing kids that they might not always be loved within a society. I know here that this clearly just meant that this often just meant that the parents might sometimes have to show like they don't really love their kids because like they didn't have like a good result and stuff like that, right? I thought that was probably what opposition had to defend if they wanted to get their benefit here. The harms of this was simple. Like these kids would just become depressed. They would just think that there was actually no one there to love them, when your family was supposed to be the people there that was always going to be there for you, that was always going to be there to support you, right? So note that target parenting is probably like not the best way because it does not prepare them for society. The second response, I think the future is just like they don't have any target parents to push them. So like if there's no more target parents to push them, like well that's not the future, right? The future is like you're like pretty much like I don't know, you're kind of like on your own. Whereas target parenting is like the parent always like forcing you to do stuff in the first place, right? So note that this did not prepare them for society. Third response here, I think competitive culture in countries are probably just like not every like country had like really competitive cultures. Like this wasn't like the culture that existed in every single country. And I would know that it was incredibly harmful when you like had target parents in a country that just like didn't have that just like didn't really have like a competitive culture, simply because like you're pushing them for nothing. You're preparing them for like absolutely nothing, right? But the fourth response here is to say that they can probably just understand these things later on in life. Like, for example, when you reach teenager, you're probably taught like economics at school and just like how much like cost of living
sucks or something like that. I really don't know like what this is. I really don't know what argument was about. The next thing they told you, he was like, well, we can form good habits. Firstly, like, we can also do this stuff like, man, like going to bed early. Like literally every single parent like does that anyways, like target parent or not. Like every parent can tell their kids to go to bed early. Like that's just ridiculous. Secondly, is to say that they'll probably just lose these habits. That the only incentive they have was like these target parents. So to the extent where you believe like these kids no longer were able to form these habits, they were unlikely to carry on with these habits anyway, simply because they don't believe in them, and they probably just like will go like partying with their friends until like 4 a.m. or something like that. As soon as like their target parents were like gone, right? But I will also know that these kids probably had just more incentive to do this kind of stuff for the reason that like for so long they were like forced to like not be able to do this. They never got to experiment with themselves, right? I would know that's probably better when kids are able to do things like experiment for themselves, and like like when like their parents gave them more freedom, simply for the reason that, like when you get to experiment for yourself, like now you know it actually sucks. But then there was always going to be like this parent there that you could fall back onto, like when you like did something wrong, when like for example you sat until 4 a.m. and you just felt like really sick, whereas like when you're out on your own, like you still have to go to job and stuff like that. So it's probably better if like these kids could do it now as opposed to later. I thought that was also just like a thing you should weigh in this debate when it comes to like habits, right? Like if we able to like if kids just do bad things now, they probably just won't do it in the future. That's probably better because the future like had just like more impacts on their life, right? Last thing to tell you here was like, well, we have an obligation towards like the kids' best future. Firstly, practical contingent. They had to actually prove to you why it was better for their future in the first place. But secondly, is to say that academics are no longer important anymore in the 21st centuries. For example, in the US, uni degrees are getting progressively less and less valuable simply because like the whole entire market is oversaturated with this uni degrees in the first place. So academics is no longer the best metric anymore. Maybe in the past that was, but now it isn't. But thirdly, to say we just make kids happier now, that was like something you should prioritize. Simply because this was a guaranteed thing. You make kids happier outside of the house, 100%. Maybe like make these people happier in the future. Now, lastly, why was this going to be a particularly coercive norm? 3 reasons. Firstly, a lot of people grew up like this. Their parents probably grew up like this. That's what the reason why they have this. So they think that this is the only way that they're able to do this. This was the only way that they were exposed to parenting in the first place. So I would know that many parents don't know any other forms. So we told you that we oppose this simply because it was really coercive, like for these parents, because like this was like the way that their parents like told them was successful parenting. Secondly, to say that society said that this was the only way. I think, for example, in China, this looks like parents who can't afford to send their children to coaching centers just looking as bad and failure parents because like they were no longer able to do this. So I know that there was also an explicit harm on the parent themselves. Who were formed by this, who were forced by this coercive norm to do this. But thirdly, to say the parents are naturally risk adverse, they're likely to default to this norm whenever they don't have any questions about what they should be doing. So that this was incredibly harmful. Impacts of this was very simple. Parents suffer, kids suffer, society suffers. So proud to propose.
So, firstly, I would like to say that in this debate, tiger parenting is something that we will all talk about, and the way that we will win is because we benefit the child more than the government side. So, firstly, I'm going to do refutation upon the deputy leader of opposition, deputy prime minister, sorry, and the government side as a whole, and then my rebuilding upon my partner's 2 points. Firstly is principle, and second, benefit and improvement, and finally, summary. So firstly, upon refutation, the government side has pointed out profusely that having tiger parenting as something that parents should do easily causes the child to burn out or feel too much pressure. But I would like to clarify that the parents push their child to excel highly in academics or extracurricular activities such as music or like sports or something. That is not to be confused with the child's happiness, nor does the tiger parents take their goal as to like take away the happiness from their child. Now, another thing about pressure is that studies in many decades have found that people perform best under pressure, and that is why we give out such pressure to this child. Now, they've also talked about very extreme cases such as suicide, self-harm, or like conflicts between the parent and child. Well, actually, that is not that likely. As I've stated before, it's a very extreme case that a child commits suicide when like they don't really have that much reason to aside from this supposed pressure. Now, every child experiences pressure at some point, so it's not really likely that at the first point that you experience pressure, you just break and just jump out a window or something. It's not very likely. Now, they've also said that parents might not know other like ways to raise a child as they have been raised in this way. But that only proves our point even more. If they have been raised this way, they won't know how to raise a child any other way, leading to them being likely to spoil their child rather than a so-called normal kind of way to raise a child. That could lead to even worse effects upon the child and that has no benefit to the child, the parent, nor the society as a whole. Now, upon my rebuilding upon my partner's points, so firstly, I'm going to talk about principle and rights. So first, upon this right, I'm going to talk about love. Why do these parents choose such a way to like tiger parent a child? That's because they love the child for all their heart. They have the child's best interest as their parents, not as like any other person might have their own selfish reasons for approaching this child. But parents, they're different. They have the best interests of their child. It's their child. They know what's best for them. They have known the child literally since they were born. Now, this kind of tiger parenting, we believe that is just another form of support, like to help the child in their future and their academic and extracurricular. So I'm now going to talk about the difference, and I'm going to clarify. Firstly, when I talked about pushing and helping to develop and to help the child develop, I separate that completely from any kind of abusement, because that would obviously break the law. I'm going to talk about benefit and improvement, which my partner has already talked about before. I'm going to talk about short and long terms. Well, firstly, when you think of a short term, you want to build a good connection with your child. Obviously, that's a very moral kind of thought. That's so good and everything else. But actually, when you love your child so much as to just be too lenient upon that child, then it could only lead them to take what you have done for granted and to think that, oh, my parents are so good to me. Yes, accepted.
Yeah, when you talk about how tiger parenting results in good academic results in the future, don't you think that because of the extreme amount of pressure, that this can mean that there are bad academic results? For example, if they can't study because they're worried and have stress or anxiety, and so this like basically removes a lot of your case?
As I've stated before, pressure. I will now say that pressure comes in many shapes and sizes. Now, firstly, obviously, too much pressure would obviously break the child. That is just probably kind of obvious. But what we are talking about in tiger parenting is different from abusement or like PUA or something like that. When we talk about tiger parenting, we do not mean that they put the child to so much pressure as to make them burn out, but we put them to necessary pressure as to help them succeed in their academics, thus leading to what I've said before. Now, anyways, going on what I've said before, talking about short-term, when normal parents do such things, the child takes them what they've done for granted, and thus they have a mindset that they link every single person to this thing that they take for granted. They think that it's granted that people should do that to them, that this is like fair for others to do that to them. So when someone, perhaps not even bullying them, just doesn't see eye to eye to them, isn't that big of a supporter of them, they might just crash. Why are they like so mean to me, they might think. But actually, when they're not even bullying this child, they're just being a normal person with their own life. This can lead where the child have a full sense of security and a full sense that everyone is going to love me, as a mindset in this society, which will eventually lead to actual burnouts, pressure, and a lot more of like not a lot more likely of being depressed or have anxiety. Now I'm going to talk about long term now. When you think of tiger parenting, yeah, you might feel that it's not gonna be the best connection that you can have with your parents. But actually, when you look back upon all that you've done, you'll realize that your parents only did this out of love. They pushed you, they helped you to develop, and that gets where you are now. This can help them go into society better, have like realize that the society is crueler than they might think, and have like a better chance at having a stable life in like every aspect. So finally, on to summary, me and my partner have pointed out how with like our points about principal rights and benefiting the child, we believe that the child will benefit most from our side, and we have given clear reasons as to why. The government side that has spoken, I've refuted the points about how it can be too much pressure, or like they might commit suicide or something. So that's why I stand proudly with the opening opposition, and thank you.
Thank you, opening opposition, for mentioning our key point, quote unquote, the world is full of competition. We agree to this point totally because this is totally making problem bigger and bigger in the society, so proud to propose. Before I move on to my rebuttals and arguments, I'll first characterize this motion and mention some status quo problems. So there are really a lot of countries suffering from like students having too much competitiveness and having mental and physical health getting decreased because of the pressure and too much time of studying and getting physical stress. And this is often connected to youth suicide, also mentioned in the opening government's idea. And it is from those parents forcing children to live in a harsh schedule and see their children as a tool to achieve parents' goal that they fail to achieve. That's why in Korea or other countries having higher educational competitiveness or sending them to so many academies or extra uh, education systems, etc. And this causes more social problems like generation conflict because of the relationship between parents and children, and also because of two different background and generation culture between those generations of like Gen Z or baby boom. Certain countries have birth rate crisis and also some kind of conflict between those generation causing too much problems in the society. So we think that
Yeah.
tiger parents are in the status quo making too many problems. No. And this would emphasize under tiger parenting and those kind of parenting system is normal in the society since they would be much more strict than other parents, and it means children will feel that they are controlled and not getting love enough even though parents think they are giving much love as other parents. The burden of the government side itself is to prove why tiger parenting is a crucial and serious cause of social problems happening in the status quo. I'll first rebut some points from the LO. So the first point was about no pressure. As government mentioned, there are a lot of alternative ways to get motivated, and also because in this case, tiger parenting is so strict and giving too much pressure on the children, it actually demotivates students and getting less motivation or less uh, efficiency on working or studying. So this argument and point doesn't stand enough. And also they mentioned about they will compliment to their child even though they will not doing well or getting like perfect scores in exam, etc. However, tiger parents are strict people as it mentioned in the info slide, giving pressure. But how can it stand together with compliment on failure? I want at least closing opposition to respond this point, which is totally contradicting motion itself. The final point I want to mention from the leader of opposition was consequences. So in the short term, there's mentioning that small kids will be spoiled, but it means that they are just debating under the premise that assuming non-tiger parents allow everything and not restricting anything from children, and it doesn't stand or having any mechanism on it. The DLO mentioned about like some kind of rebuttals on OG and said that the pressure makes people perform best under the pressure, but we don't have any evidence or real life examples that supports this point. And also, even though there's no direct abuse in this pressure, we think that pressure still having indirect abuse on like physical or mental health by, as I mentioned before, the harsh schedule. And if the pressure decreases and doesn't reach that level of that level of children's burden, the argument and point of opening opposition's impact is not exclusive on their side. Also, they mentioned that the parents are raised under the tiger parents, so they don't know other way to raise children, and they quote unquote mentioned it is a normal way to not normal way as they mentioned non-tiger parents. It means they are considering tiger parenting as a normal thing, so they doesn't their argument doesn't stand anymore. Our first argument is about competition. Tiger parents want children to be the best, the more tiger parents in the society, the more should be best children in the society. Means that everyone works really hard, even over their own limit, so causing definite social problems and competitions. And those impacts would be rich and poor gap because of the educational gap between the private education and the public education, and also extracurricular things need a lot of money, especially for certain sports and certain
Yeah.
music instruments. No, and also while those process is going on, students will suffer a lot, and this makes students demotivated, as I mentioned before in my rebuttal. But this is more crucial impact in this debate and in the society itself, because not only competition between children will happen, but also for parents, because parents will always think about, oh, that parent will give that much of education because they have this kind of information, this kind of money, etc. And that means they will have actual burden to like invest a lot in their children, and this will demotivate also for like potential parents who will be like married or something. So like they will not actually have babies a lot, and this will emphasize the problems of birth rate in certain countries like South Korea or Japan. Moving on to my last argument about education systems. So education system requires every aspect, including academic, extracurricular, and social aspect. However, in this case, tiger parents ignoring the whole point regarding social aspect, and social aspects like communication or like social skills to solving problems, etc. Because globalized society in the same school has so much people have different culture, different background, different religion, etc. So understanding and precise communication with social skills are necessary in this kind of society. However, in the same school, this is
But
ignored a lot, and making some discrimination or conflicts both on and offline is very, very common. Also, I want to mention that limitation and restriction on children's path is often happening in the state school, because not in every categories, even though in academics are picked by the parents, only like doctors, lawyers, those kind of stable jobs are preferred from the parents. So that is making everyone having no kind of diversity and being the same people. So I'm very
but
proud to.
As the closing opposition, I want to point out the extremely uncharitable characterization that both the CG and OG tried to run and what the first opposition failed to catch. They tried to characterize tiger parenting such as parents believing that academic pursuit is the best thing for your kid. We believe that that is extremely uncharitable and wrong as well. Tiger parenting is having your kids focus on the things they are good at in order to be successful. Mind you, this is exactly what it says on the info slide, so they cannot twist their way out of this. For example, if you're good at soccer, we can hire a personal trainer for you. If you're good at chess, we can encourage you to get into chess tournaments. This also means that these are probably the stuff that the kids themselves like to do, or at least have some kind of passion, right? So a bit of reframing and responses from both the OG and CG. So I think both their arguments can be broken down into two main parts. The first part is why tiger parenting is ineffective and why most children will start to break down under academic pressure. We believe that our reframing already taken this down because, uh, you know, tiger parenting isn't just about academic pursuit. We believe that parents can adapt to whatever their children wants to do and want to excel at. We believe that even if we have already taken this down, we can still take them at their best case and try to be charitable. So obviously, if their parents see that their children aren't academically gifted and completely struggling with their school, obviously they would look out for other talents that their children possess and would mostly excel in. This means that allowing their kids to try out different skill sets and try out different experiences and try to maximize the success that their kids can share. And they also want to talk about why we have worse familial relationships. We believe that
Right.
on our side, tiger parents doesn't mean that they are not loving, right? For example, my mom can tell me how important my career is, but she still remembers my birthday and still asks me how my day was after I got home from school. I think ultimately we have to look at this debate in the scope where parents are loving and still have the best intentions for their kids. Because on either side, uncaring and failed parents would still be detrimental to their kids either way. So their argument about kids would just disregard their parents' opinions and advices due to uncaring parenting would already be taken down by this response. I would like to move on to the first argument, why we pave a better future for our children. I have three layers under this argument. First, what does societies with tiger parenting look like? We believe that the societal trend of being extremely competitive, such as China and South Korea, is pretty prominent, right? This also means that social class is extremely important. So there's obviously an asymmetry of resources in those kind of countries and regions, and resources only go to the higher classes and doesn't really flow down to the lower class where they are extremely vulnerable and actually need help. Moving on to the second layer, why is tiger parenting important then? We believe that when parents focus on your success, they maximize the amount of resources that their children get. Parents look at the bigger picture of their children's lives, right? So if they encourage their children to have a good academic career, that also means that their children can be opened up to good college options if they excel in high school, which ultimately leads to a better paying job and more autonomy over your life because you now get to choose which kind of lifestyle you want yourself to be in. They also maximize your chances of success, right? They actively try to get you, let's say, good tutors, or they encourage you to compete, for example, in debate tournaments, in which we're currently doing right now, right? We believe that having tiger parents means you experience the reality of life beforehand. Society is competitive, and children would have to know that. And having someone accompany them throughout this journey is really beneficial for them because you get to have a safety net to fall on, have a good advisor, and also have someone to guide you through the harsh reality in life, which ultimately would build up a better resilience and a better attitude towards life. But before I move on to the third layer of this argument, sure, go ahead.
Isn't this just super harmful for low SES parents who can't afford things like coaching or really good tutors, but like because society coerces them to doing this?
I believe that even though there are still really needy people, focusing on education or what your kid is good at wouldn't really require that much amount of resources as long as you're willing to put in the effort, right? We believe that you don't really have to put tangible resources in as well. Parents can still encourage their kids to pursue what they're good at, encourage their kids to, say, pursue a better debating career or pursue a better soccer career, for example, even if the parents cannot afford high class, tangible benefits for their kids, they can still have a very positive attitude in whatever their children decide to do, and that would maximize their success as well. So moving on to the third layer then, why is this important? Two things I want to talk about under this layer. We believe that the first thing is resources are inherently zero sum. This is saying that if you don't get into a good college or have a good career, you don't get more opportunities in the future, right? So even if we have less autonomy as a child, we take the trade-off because having more autonomy in the future is way more important than having those fleeting pleasure when you're a kid and having, playing video games in your friend's house all the day, right? We believe that the autonomy for you to choose what job you want, where you want to live in the future is way more important because these decisions are life-changing and that would stick with you for the rest of your life. For example, even if you grow up happily as a child and end up having to work 3 days three jobs a day, we say that that's still a way more harmful decision for you to make, and we do not want to take this harmful decision that proposition side is trying to force on us. The second thing I want to say is that parents are a better actor in these societies when it comes to the children's success. Parents are the ones who have gone through all the process of growing up. So they know what it looks like to be unsuccessful, having to get multiple jobs at once if they want to get a living, or having to pay for mortgages a lot, right? So the reason why they go into tiger parenting mode in the first place is that they want to prevent their children from going into these same situations and suffering those inherent challenges that they experienced first-handedly. And why are children bad actors in this particular case? We believe that they lack experience in this competitive world. We also believe that children oftentimes prioritize short-term benefits like temporary joy, such as focusing a lot on video games or hanging out with friends in clubs or whatsoever. We also believe that there is this peer pressure that lures them into things that are not going to be beneficial for them. So ultimately speaking, parents would be a better actor to actually tell their kids to be successful and try to encourage their kids to pursue a better career decision. Due to all of these reasons, we are really proud to oppose. Thank you.
Anna over there likes ballet. Yeah, that's really great. But does she want to do it 10 hours a day at the age of 6? Well, I don't think so, because that's what tiger parents, by ensuring their children's safety and by ensuring their children to have a job later on, that's what tiger parents are going to do. They're going to force these children, to like do ballet or do academic stuff, become a doctor, become a lawyer at the age of 6 to 10 hours a day. And they're going to do these kind of they're going to perform these kind of harassments to every extent, and this is why, as side government, we are so proud to propose the motion. Let me do a quick rebuttal for like the closing opposition side, because I don't think that they read the info side at all. Why is it important that we do not pass the motion? Judge, they tell us why is this like so important? Because they tell us that they're going to like maximize, they're going to do like a max, therefore they tell us that all these tiger parents are going to do is provide their children with the maximum amount of resources that they can possibly provide. And they're going to, like give private tutors and give private coaches or whatnot. I think, Judge, that initially comes to the value that they're going to pressure these children, they're going to like oppress these children to succeed in their lives, and we tell you that this is very mentally bad for these children. Encouraging themselves to do better at sports, to do better at academic stuff, does not mean ensuring themselves, pressuring those children, and telling their children, oh, if you don't study math for 10 hours a day, you're going to completely fail in your life. That's what ensuring their success is so proud to propose. Society is competitive. We get that. You need to be more competitive than the already competitive people in order for yourself to be competitive in this already competitive society. They're going to just the tiger parents are going to do nothing but pressure their children into to study and whatnot. Second of all, what? Autonomy as a children is not important? I don't know what they're going to say, because autonomy as a child is very, very important. You need to learn how to make decisions in your life. You need to learn how you're going to manage your physical development, and you need to learn how you're going to control your study pace in order to succeed and in order to, have a very peaceful and healthy life. Autonomy as a child, it leads to development of self in the very young ages. So I don't know why side opposition as a whole is just disregarding that fact. Final rebuttal that we'd like to develop. Do parents have the initial right?
Yeah.
No, thank you. No. Like seriously, yeah, we get that children have less experience than these parents, but that does not necessarily mean that the parents just have a right to completely boss their children around and do whatever they're going to do and tell these children to do that and do this. Parents saying, oh, I have more knowledge, you follow, that I think that in some perspective is not respecting those children's opinions, and which at the end of the day is some sort of harassment that side opposition is proposing in this debate. Okay, thank you. Now that the rebuttals are done, let's talk about why side's closing government wins over side opening government, and why side opposition, and why we win over side opposition as well. Let's first tackle side opposition. Judge, I want to make it clear. What are the characteristics of tiger parenting? You're going to have demanding parents. You're going to have strict parents. You're going to have controlling parents. You're going to have result-oriented parents. You're going to have very, very, very authoritative parents. Success is not an option, but a requirement for these parents, which is why the parents initially have the thought that you're going to pressure these children to study and whatnot. Success-biased parenting has inevitable pressure. Why? Everybody wants to succeed in our society. That's such a natural phenomenon. But in order to succeed in already such a competitive society, you're going to have to be more competitive than the already competitive people, and that's what the parents are going to force them to do. Oftentimes, excessive pressure. This is too much for the children, and they're going to have these kind of mental impacts. The world that the opening opposition depicts is not tiger parents. Well, the world that's cooling opposition depicts is not tiger parents. Tiger parents look like the very demanding, and they're going to ensure their success, right? Tiger parents' main incentive in the future, but this does not, yeah, we get that, but this does not justify the way that they are currently treating their children right now. Inducing children to suffer when they haven't even graduated middle school, I don't think that's what healthy parenting looks like. Healthy parenting looks like we get that ensuring your child's future is very important, but it looks like respecting your child's opinions at a young age, so they can grow up with a healthy mentality, which the side opposition completely ignores. Okay, but even if what I just said is completely wrong, and when tiger parents is the only very way to have a brighter future, because that's the only impact of side opposition. If I break that down, side opposition deserves to lose, right? Well, okay, then let's break that down. Even if we say that this is justified, and even if tiger parents are the only way that the child can lead to success or whatnot, I don't think that that's going to necessarily lead to a brighter future, because there's no such mechanism. What they are likely to be, actually, they're likely to be overwhelmed. They're likely to run away from these parents, because they're likely to run away from this such a strict life, because their parents are so focused on ensuring a better future. I don't think, and if you don't really, and if for the tiger parents, then what's the point of and then for the whole case, what's the point if your child is just going to run away? Okay, now that I've rebutted the whole opposition case and proved to you why side government wins, okay, then let's tell you why we win over side opening government. Opening government had a very lovely characterization. Why is it bad for the children? Why it's bad for the household? Why it's bad for the society, etc. Okay, but we are unique because we are unique because opening government did not consider other aspects, and how in the very long end it creates a very vicious cycle, and it creates a very vicious cycle. Our previous speaker has already told you. And it creates parent competition, who makes their children study more, who makes their children study even more than that. That's why a world with tiger parents are going to look like. We, on the other hand, still ensure without these tiger parents, we still ensure these children to study at the end of the day, because the students are going to have this kind of autonomy. They're going to be able to study what they want and what they want to pursue, instead of becoming a very successful ballerina, or instead of being a very successful doctor. They're going to decide for themselves, and that's what's going to create the motivation to study on our side, instead of completely stressing these children out and then making them very tired, making them have a very restricted life. This is what's mutual. This is what's exclusive on our side. Their side is not effective. Our side is. So proud to propose. Please vote for side government. Thank you.
Proposition cannot just live in a little world of sunshine, flowers, and unicorns. At the end of the day, children still have to go out into reality. Right? They still have to face a competitive society that both government side and opposition side have framed. I think at least under our side of house, when you actually know reality beforehand, that's when you're able to survive. That's when you're able to have a better future as a person. Few pieces of responses before going into our main weighing on the well-being of children and why we win the clash, right? So first layer of response on how tries to say, society coerces parents into pouring a lot of resources that are over their limit, right? I think one is just mainly symmetrical, right? Because even without the existence of tiger parenting, in the competitive societies that OG framed themselves, societal pressure still exists under both sides of the house. I think the asymmetry of resources exists under both sides of the house anyway. The fact that opening government does not solve this problem under their side of the house either means that they cannot push this further onto us without explaining why it's able to be better under their side of the house. But then second piece of response, I think it's a relatively better under our side of house, right? Because at least with the existence of tiger parenting, parents are able to help children get a better future. We see the reason why helping their children get a better future is pretty important, right? Because one is simply your parents' obligation to take care of your kids and give them a better future. Compared to you having an obligation for society and maybe, I don't know, preserving some resources. But also too, we say tiger parenting is still the best alternative under our side of house. Yes, we bite the bullet that yes, there's a lot of pressure towards these kind of kids. Maybe some kids cannot bear the pressure, they still commit suicide. But I think the fact that tiger parenting exists means that you tell these children beforehand that reality is harsh, right? Because even if you protect your children right now, society does not protect them. Society still forces a lot of competition onto them anyway. I think competition and pressure is something that exists under both sides of the house. At least under our side of the house, when you're actually getting used to the pressure is when you're able to survive in these kind of societies. Also, too, we say target parenting means that parents have the obligation to help their kids succeed, right? Because the fact that you have to help your kids excel and success in whatever they're doing means that you yourself have the responsibility to do so. This means that you cannot push all the responsibility onto your kids and say, oh, you're not trying hard enough, because you yourself also have to give them the resources to help them succeed, right? But also too, it means that you have to walk your kids through the process of achieving success, because only when you actually walk your kids through the process, when you actually know all the challenges they're facing, is when you can actually help them reach success, instead of just telling them to do well in whatever test you're taking without actually understanding the challenges they're going through and helping them constructively, right? But then the second piece of response onto how both government houses try to say, oh, there's a lot of mental harm to kids. I think when mental harm happens under both sides anyways, right? Because society is equally competitive under both sides of the house. I think why is it done that is better under our side of the house? I think it's pretty simple, right? Because on the government side of the house, you still live in a low, happy bubble of sunshine, flowers, and unicorns. Your parents tell you that, oh, it's okay to be happy. It's okay for you to have a lot of freedoms, make your own decisions, hang out with your friends. I think this means that but at the end of the day, you still have to face the competitive reality, right? Because when you actually graduate from college, when you actually go out and get a job, your boss is not going to tell you, oh, you can still make your own decisions. You can still be happy and hang out with your friends without finishing all your work, right? I think this means that if the competitive reality is the same, at least take a better route to help your kids adjust to that, right? You cannot just tell them to just be happy in their happy little bubble. I think tiger parenting is something that helps your kids adjust to reality, simply because you tell them what kind of pressure they're going to face in the future. No, thank you, I'll take you after. But also because you tell them, because you show them exactly what they have to do in order for them to succeed and to get a better future as a whole, right? But then, before going on to Wayne, I'll take your point.
Which do you think is more important? The guaranteed benefits that kids will be happier under our side of the house when there's no more target parenting, or the possibility that target parents do lead to better academic results?
I think if your well-being, if the guarantee of your children being happy comes at the cost of them having a really bad job in the future and having to maybe, I don't know, take 3 jobs at the same time, I don't think is a good trade-off to take under your side of house anyway. So then onto our main piece of wing on the well-being of children. Government science tells us you can guarantee short-term happiness for your children. You have a really, really happy childhood, right? I think if the really, really happy childhood comes at the cost of really miserable adulthood, we're not going to take the trade-off anyway. I think the reason why is pretty simple, because ultimately adulthood is more important, right? Because one, it simply is a bigger part of your life than the 18 years of your childhood, but also two, is more influential, right? Because whatever social class you're in when you grow up in the future is what kind of defines you for your whole life, right? For example, if you graduate from college and become no, thank you. If you graduate from college and then, I don't know, you work jobs in convenience stores, I think it's relatively harder for you to climb up the social ladder, right? But compared to you as a child, when you actually really work hard and try to be successful, I think you simply have a larger opportunity for you to maybe climb up the social ladder, get a better job in the future, and guarantee yourself a better future, right? I think the fact that you having a short-term happiness, I think even if you can guarantee that you have short-term happiness, you don't have guarantee for future success, right? No, thank you. I'm not going to take you. So I think on the contrary, under opposition, yes, children might have to work a lot harder. They might have to face a lot more pressure, but at least at the end of the day, this builds onto them having a better ability, right? I think the guarantee here is that even if it does not mean that you can go be a CEO in some really big company, at least it means that you have the ability to get a better job or at least get into a better college, right? You say ability is a better guarantee than maybe just your own happiness. I think at least on the long run, they will have the autonomy to choose what life they at least to them in the future. But then onto my second part of the class on why we win over opening opposition. I think it's pretty simple because opening opposition did not point out the uncharable characterizations and they did not redefine what it means to be a tiger parent, but also too, they may have given us marginal benefits of tiger parenting, but they did not tell us to what extent is this important and also why it actually wins over government science case. So what have we contributed to you in this debate? I think one, we've told you that at least with tiger parenting, it is a better alternative because it guarantees that your parents are going to help you through the process to success or maybe just to a better future as a whole. But also too, we show you why is a better guarantee to you having a better future and why this better future is more important compared to the maybe better mental well-being for children right now. For all these reasons above, so proud to oppose.